So today we have Christopher Engman joining us. He's a serial entrepreneur, investor, and large deal advisor in sustainability scale-ups. Christopher spends about 50% of his time on Megadeals and the rest as an investor or advisor for 16 other companies. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you, Daniel. My pleasure.
So, for those of us not familiar with Megadeals, the business you're running, tell us about what you do and what's the mission for Megadeals.
So we're solving what could be the B2B world's most well-kept secret, which is the dependency on key people. We call them rainmakers. So a rainmaker dependency is the branded problem we work against, and that is common both with startup scale-ups, but also with very mature. Some of the largest companies in the world have the same problem. It's just well kept.
Right.
It's not talked about a lot. And we have built this a commercial go-to-market model for companies with that kind of key people dependency or expert dependency. And we deliver it both in the shape of strategy advice or go-to-market design, but also in the shape of being part of the execution. And we today have clients from Salt Lake City, San Diego, Philadelphia, Boston, all the way to Japan, India, Malaysia, Israel, and parts of Europe. Mainly in, as you mentioned, in the sustainability scale-up type of clients, but we also deal with a lot of SaaS companies, but also some of the biggest companies in the world like HP, Microsoft, Tata, etc.
Right.
But mainly around scale-ups with an expert dependency.
All right. And do you see, when we're trying to grow the team here at Upsales, we're looking for people who have the experience of driving larger deals. And I mean, in my experience, you typically only find these people at like global giants at the US larger software companies in our industry. And it's not so common in like 10 or 20 million euro companies. Is this something you see as well, that smaller companies struggle with this?
Yeah, I do. You can find them also from the ABBs, and it doesn't have to be American companies. It can also be from wherever in the world. But you're right. It's that expertise is more common in the larger company space, where you're blending projects, software, services, SLAs, sometimes even project financing, and so it becomes pretty complex, and that's more common in larger companies. But as we call them, mega dealers are typically super valuable even in startups and scale-ups, because they can represent like half of the revenue in one person. It can be very, very dominant in the impact they create. Typically what you see, though, they're not so easily recruited because they're typically having golden handcuffs. So when someone like you or me, when we find them, we give them strong incentives, option programs, because they're super valuable, high salaries. And if you look in the large, there's also another complexity. When you want to recruit them from large companies, they typically sit with a monthly salary of absolute minimum $20,000, but quite often way more than that. And it's not so easy to get them to move. It's like a luxury trap, but it's not the luxury trap you see on TV where you've overspent on your credit card. This is more like you have a very high annual revenue as an employee, and you build your life around it. So you go to the Maldives, and you have two cars and a summer house and a ski lodge, and an expensive family to rotate. So I have a lot of friends. You mentioned the American big IT companies. I have a lot of friends working in the big American IT companies that are in that luxury trap. And they say, I don't even like my job anymore, but I can't quit.
Yeah. I'm trying to recruit a guy like that. He has like $1.5 million in annual salary, and it's
exactly
too big of a risk for us to give him that money.
Yeah, exactly. And there's another complexity. If you take such a person from a proven brand, so like a well-known brand, the statistics show that 15% of them succeed equally well with an unproven brand. I mean, Upsales, you're kind of a semi-proven. You're not unknown, but you're not an IBM either. So maybe in your environment it can potentially work because you're like a medium-sized company now. But there's a very like you said, it's a big risk to engage them, and it's a pretty high failure rate. There's one client that we work with.
That's
they
very
recruited 10 people like that from IBM, and they had to fire all of them because all of them were used to coming out with a super strong brand. And then all of a sudden it was more, and you know this, when you're a smaller company, you are the brand.
Exactly.
I mean, Upsales is the brand, but it's like vice versa. A person that represent Upsales is more the brand than Upsales. And then, but when you are an IBM is the brand. And it becomes like a gravitation. Boom.
Right. And your background, I mean, in 2006, you founded Vendemore, which was one of the first account-based advertising companies in the world.
We were the first.
You were the first?
We were the first, yeah. Okay. Yeah. We were 2 months ahead of Demand Base, which was one of the other early ones. But unfortunately, I sold the company several years too early. But I had built 2 companies before in the SaaS space, and they became successful, but I made way too little money myself, to be honest. So when the bid came a bit too early, I took it right or wrong. But
all right.
Yeah.
Understandable. So what was like most impactful for getting Vendemore going and reaching the success you had?
So we did one thing really, really well. We were very stringent about following the crossing the chasm methods. So we went very early, and I think you were even one of the early clients when you were smaller. So we went for
I remember,
for small and medium-sized SaaS companies with a Stockholm headquarter. And people think, oh, there are 11. No, there were 400. So that was our initial target, and we quite quickly had 100 of those 400. So when we went then for 101 and 102, they were like, yeah, you work with everyone. And then we used that penetration to step it up to go for the larger software companies like Microsoft and Oracle, etc. And they felt that we were proven. And then once we had won a pretty high proportion of the largest software companies in the world, we expanded the definition into IT. So all of a sudden we could approach the TCSs and the Atea and those and Tieto, and we basically won all of those. And then we used that to redefine it again, and we said we were working with some of the largest companies in the world. So we actually got to a point where we had over 100 Fortune 500 companies as clients. I'm not saying that's ideal, but it was a pretty deliberate strategy on how we moved our position, and using the former position as a lever into the next position. But then unfortunately, I'm pretty sure if we would have done it a few more years, it would be a completely different exit number. But anyway, I would make the same decision again. But still a good journey.
Right.
Fun. Yeah.
I mean, I can really relate to the early days when I started Upsales. I mean, the first few customers you meet, I mean, all of them ask you, who else is doing this?
Yeah.
It's really hard when, there's one guy we actually managed to convince.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to just find a niche and keep digging. That's what we did as well, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're strong in some like media and some other verticals.
Right.
So, and I think what's very common for the entrepreneurs listening, a common mistake that I even see today is that you have an innovation and it's so tempted to prove it with everyone that you start to have one reference per industry. But that's typically very hard. So a founder like you have typically a very elastic brain, so we can kind of adapt to new situations. But then when you put a sales force on it and a delivery team, they become confused because the clients are different. The segments are different. Even though you could say, well, we sell the same solution. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. They use it slightly differently. They have different terminology, different KPIs. They know different people. So it's very powerful to be very stringent, as we were with Vendemore, and we try to be with Megadeals as well. We go proactively to sustainability scale-ups. We have 400 of them listed from around the world that we're really going hard for. But then we are reactive. If someone from outside of that world is coming to us, we have rather qualification criteria. So we run the qualification criteria, and if there's a match, we engage with them. But we're not going for them. Another tip for those listening, it's important not to just build revenue. You also need to build dominance. most companies are looking too much on revenue and too little on dominance.
Right.
And for long-term revenue and also for valuation, if you become the segment and category leader, you get 76% of the global shareholder value, which is tremendous. And it's very important to build a position, not just revenue. Like for you, if you are the dominant player worldwide in the media industry, it's very hard to beat you.
So talking about like the selling process for larger deals or even mega deals, I mean, where in the selling process, where do you think most companies underperform?
So first of all, a common mistake is to not match what you're selling into a client's key initiative. The big corporations in particular have typically 3 to 5. You might even have it already now at Upsales, 3 to 5. These are big programs we're running. These are big things we want to achieve in the coming 1 to 3 years. And you need to find a fit into one of those strategic programs or key initiatives. Otherwise, you'll find pilot money in the corner if you want to go for the larger deals. And it's a very easy fix, actually. So to have that in the weekly or bi-weekly sales meeting and ask the salespeople, which key initiative do we have a fit with?
Right.
I think that's an easy, if you listener want to take an easy one away from this podcast, that's one. And was that the sales bell?
No, I think it was a text actually.
Okay. A second one, so very, I would say most salespeople don't know the difference between a budget owner and a sign-off level. So let's say you are a middle manager somewhere, Daniel. I know you're not, but let's say you are. I'm selling to you and you say, I want to do this. Then I go home and say to my equivalent to you, yeah, we got to deal with Upsales. But I say it's Daniel's budget. But you might have a budget of 100 million to spend, but your sign-off level is 100,000.
Right.
So then for relatively small amounts, you need to go up to the C level and sometimes even to the board. And that's like a super common mistake. So when salespeople are saying, yeah, this is 90%, and now they've said a verbal yes, and still it doesn't happen. That's a very common mistake. So just to know the typical sign-off levels is a very good start. And that's the thing you can you can figure it out, and you can have it as kind of also in the sales meetings. So when Stefan is running an account and saying to you, yeah, we have this company and now we're soon to close it, and then you say, so who do you speak to? Yeah, I speak to this guy, he's a VP of blah blah blah. And you go, the sign-off of a VP is typically $100,000, and the deal value is $200,000. Then you know this has to be escalated. So then you need to get people higher up earlier. So that's a common mistake. And the third one would be, which is kind of related, is that we are underestimating how many stakeholders are involved, both cross-hierarchy and cross-functionally. So we bet too much on our contact and underestimate the need to anchor the deal in the company. What else?
Do you see what's increasing?
Which one?
I mean, at Upsales, we're actually seeing that the last 5 years, I would say we're seeing a trend that like more people are involved even in smaller deals compared to 5 years ago. I don't know if it's GDPR or anything else, but are you seeing something like that?
I think during a recession, the number of yeses no need definitely increases. Right. If it's a fixed change, I don't know actually, but it's definitely the case in a recession. Typically, the sign-off levels are shrunk significantly. So all of a sudden, someone that had $100,000 sign-off level is now down to 20.
Exactly.
So more to say, and some companies even do a very dramatic one, say anything needs to be signed by the CEO, which is of course not very smart, but you see those kind of extreme measures.
Right, and budgets are getting tighter, of course.
And when you need to go up, you typically need to win more votes as well.
Right.
You need to drive more consensus. But I don't know if it's a permanent shift. But it's definitely.
And what would you say? I mean, getting to the to the economic buyer or to the C-level person when you're talking to somebody lower down in the organization? What are some of the best ways to do that?
Right. Well, first of all, I strongly recommend marketing for that, to really drive marketing in parallel with the sales. And we have lots of videos on that if anyone is interested. But secondly, you need to build a messaging that's different. So the technical buyer is typically looking for, this is my problem, here's a solution, and then they look at competitors. Whereas the financial buyers higher up are saying, okay, is this even a top prioritized problem? So there's a competition among problems. Then there's a competition among categories. I mean, to solve the problems you are solving, CRM is not necessarily the only answer. It might be recruit a heavy hitter or buy another company, or I don't know, do sales training. And then, so both on a category level and on a subcategory level. So the top management, and you probably know this in your company, are mostly looking at priorities between problems, priorities between categories, and priorities in subcategories. They don't look at they don't look so much at the specific vendor solution. So a very common mistake there is that we get the chance to present to the C-suite, but then we do a demo, and they are not interested in the demo. They are mostly looking at the puzzle they're building, not the pieces in the puzzle, but which pieces should be fitted together.
So do you have any like horror stories when it comes to recruiting people for doing these complex deals?
Oh yeah, I did. In one of my early companies, I brought in 2 very senior guys from Ericsson, and this was during the period when Ericsson was like having 50% of the global market in telecom equipment and software.
Right.
So they were used to coming out to Malaysia and those places and being received with a guide and going for a dinner that the customer paid for, with the world's strongest telecom brand in the back. And all of a sudden they were working with me, and they called the clients, and clients just hung up on them. And they were so angry, like, why aren't they talking politely with me? I was like, because you're no one to them. They were so spoiled. And again, this goes back to the 15% failure rate. Like, it's very tempting, and I think you should try to find the really good mega deals from big companies, but you need to be aware of certain aspects. And I think it's good to test them, because if they are used to being served too much, and they're used to riding on a brand too much, then they are not typically pulling their weight. And it's also important to determine, were these guys orchestrating the deals, or were they just part of the deal team? I can be a part of a mega deal team, but I'm just a regular guy. But then there was one orchestrator who orchestrated it, who really made a difference.
So, I mean, how do you, if you want to find somebody with relevant experience, you might, I mean, sometimes you have to look at like people working in really large companies. How do you distinguish if you're talking to one of the 15% or one of the 85%?
You know, I hate to say it, but I don't have a good formula. So the thing we do instead is to build more marketing around the proven people. So take them from being Bruce Willis in Die Hard to being Iron Man with drones and a super suit, and you might see me and a few others, and you are visible as well a lot in media. That's one of the tricks, to scale the best people instead of trying to duplicate them. Then you need to do some recruitments like that. But I honestly don't have a good formula, and the problem is that I haven't met a company that has a good formula for it. It's like a latent problem. If someone comes up with that formula, I gladly look at it. Probably you too, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of the ultimate question.
A holy grail, yeah. And I've seen people, you probably know people like that as well. They're very good at spotting winning companies. So they have worked in all the cool places. They've been at Google, LinkedIn, they've been at and then you think that they're brilliant. But I know several people like that. They're just very good at picking winners.
Right.
They are not making the winners. They are picking winners. and then their CV looks amazing. That doesn't mean they would perform in your environment.
I mean, and we forget that even though, you know, how many people are working at Google? I mean, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 maybe.
And where it says, I mean,
and
I
not
know
all of them are super smart, obviously.
There are obviously some smart people, but when it says, but there are way too many having ex-Google on their LinkedIn profile. Like, okay, yeah, like were you country manager or a business unit or CEO, or were you flipping papers? I mean, it's just
right.
So it's a big difference.
So looking at, I mean, sales management and sales leadership. If you were to come in a company and you find like a low performing sales team with a low motivation, what would be some of the like first steps you would take to try to improve the situation and transform this into a more productive team?
Or maybe let them go.
That might be the answer.
No, but it's. I think you find too many companies that keep the second half of the sales force are just not performing well enough, and then we keep our hopes high and we do a lot of things. Sometimes you just cut it. So quite often I've seen the highest performance increases when you cut the lower third or the lower half or the lower 25%, and then you reallocate money into more marketing around the high performers. And this is in particular in the large deal space. Transactional side, I'm not equally good at.
All right. So looking forward, what will be your focus for Megadeals in the coming 3 years?
So what we've done in the last half year, which is not thanks to me, I brought in a guy called Jonas Lind. He's absolutely amazing. He was a CEO of Malaysia's largest software company, so a 30 billion company. And he is very much complementing myself. I have a lot of creativity. I'm pretty good at seeing product market fit and building models, etc. He's just amazing at driving simplification and standardization. So I can sometimes be a victim of perfect is the enemy of the good. So what we've built right now is a Megadeals delivery model, which is it's not reaching 100% of the value. It's reaching 50 to 70% of the value, but at a very affordable ticket, and in a way that doesn't break the back of the client.
All right, looking forward to see what happens in the future. So thanks a lot for joining us today. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise, Daniel.